Alrighty, Paper Hero here with the first video and a long series of video on the introduction to Zbrush. Now before we jump right into the program, we're going to take a quick note on defining Zbrush and how Zbrush thinks a little bit, because Zbrush is unlike any other 3D application out there. It has a very unique way of doing things, and the way it thinks is not like what you find in 3ds Max or Maya or Softimage or Blender or what have you. Alright, so we're going to first off just to give a simple definition to what Zbrush is. Now, Zbrush is, plain and simple, a 3D sculpting and painting app. So in Zbrush, it's primarily used for painting 2D images or sculpting in 3D. Now, pretty much everyone uses it for this right here, the 3D sculpting. You know, it does have a lot of cool painting functions, though, that we will go into later in the series. Alrighty, so let's also define what Zbrush is not. Now, Zbrush does not have a whole lot in terms of animation going for it. Although there are very limited animation capabilities within Zbrush, it's very limited, and it's nothing like the animation you'll find in Softimage or 3ds Max or the other big animation programs out there. So you're not going to be using Zbrush to animate your characters and make movies out of it. Alrighty, so now that we have a basic idea of what Zbrush is, let's talk about a little bit how it thinks. And we're going to talk about the 2.5D world. Okay, so Zbrush has in itself three basic functions. We have our 3D world, we have our 2D world, and we also have something going on called a 2.5D. Now, what do I mean when I say 2.5D? Basically, in order to get the crazy high polygon count you can get in Zbrush, Pixelogic had to develop another system in order to get that many polygons and able to sculpt it really smoothly and seamlessly. So they created the pixel. And you heard me right, it is the pixel with an O. This is a new thing. And basically what a pixel is, it is just like a pixel plus depth. So we know that a pixel is contained of, red, green, and blue to give it its color on the screen, but a pixel is just going to add a Z depth to it. And this basically works like this. You have a flat image with the square being the flat image, but it kind of pops up at you just like that. So you have your RGB stored in the actual picture. And then you have your Z, which is your depth, which gives it, your lighting information and able to make it look and feel 3D. In Zbrush, primarily, you're not looking in a 3D scene. It's very confusing to wrap your head around at first, but let's think of it this way. Let's say you have a camera, looking onto a picture. That is how Zbrush works, and you got your depth here, your Z. This is how Zbrush sees 3D, which is not like the way something like Max would see 3D. This is how Max sees 3D. You have a plane, with your 3D object in the middle, and then your camera's kind of looking down at it. And you can rotate this camera wherever, and then you can get a different view of your 3D scene, and then you scale, rotate, and your objects. But that's not how Zbrush works. Zbrush's camera is stationary. It does not move. What moves is the actual objects on the 2.5D picture. And so when you navigate within Zbrush's viewport, it's going to feel like you're doing this. It's going to feel like you're rotating your camera around and getting the view of a 3D object in different angles, but you're not doing that. What you're doing is you're taking a 3D object and you're moving that object. You're scaling that object and you're rotating that object. That's what it looks and feels like. So when you scale an object in ZBrush, it's going to have the same effect as if you were zooming in your 3ds Max Blender application and what have you. So that's an important note because it does come into play later of how ZBrush thinks, especially with some naming conventions and how it's played out. Alright, so in our next video, we're going to be talking about the user interface. We're going to jump right in and demonstrate how it thinks differently in terms of this pixel and 2.5D world.